I'm Robin Lundberg, and I'm joined by Ryan Aselta and Tiki Barber. None of us have a lifetime private jet negotiated into our contract that I'm aware of. Maybe Tiki does.
No, not at all.
We'll get to what's going on with the NFL and Roger Goodell in just a second, but wanted to talk to the former All-Pro first about some stuff on the field. And one of the reasons Jerry Jones may be so upset with Goodell and the NFL is the Ezekiel Elliott suspension. Now,
of course,
Zeke didn't play this weekend. Cowboys didn't look so good, managing just 7 points in a loss to the Falcons. Can they survive this stretch without Zeke?
It's going to be tough. Now, look, Alfred Morris is a decent running back. We saw him when he was in Washington. He averaged almost 5 yards a carries yesterday. But it's less about getting yardage. It's more about making big plays. What makes this Dallas Cowboys offense go with Zeke is that he's liable to rip off a 70-yard run, or he'll run through a tackle and get 35 yards on a critical moment in the game. Alfred Morris is not going to do that, and so they miss that. And as a result, they can't rely on field-changing plays coming from their run game. So they have to drop back and pass it. And we saw this when Tyron Smith is out because of groin and back injuries. Chaz Green has to fill in at left tackle, and Adrian Claiborne gets 6 sacks. I mean, it's unheard of. I mean, he's good. He's not Derek Thomas good, but that's what he played like yesterday. And so without Zeke, their offensive game plan by necessity just changes, and they're just not used to it right now. I don't know what the next 5 games are going to entail, but I hope it's better than this.
Let's talk about your Giants, Tiki.
Must we?
They lose to the previously winless 49ers. Ben McAdoo says after the game that he was out-coached, the guy on the hot seat admitting that. Probably not a great idea. Does McAdoo survive this season?
He'll survive the season because that's just how the Giants handle things. I remember back in 2003 when we knew that Coach Fossil was on his way out, and they were looking for somebody else. I mean, Jim actually came in and told us, like, I'm done after this year, but I'm going to coach the next 4 games or 3 games, whatever it was at the end of the year. So the Giants aren't going to fire him midseason. It's just not how they do things. Are they certainly looking for the next step? I'm sure, because what we're seeing now, forget what's going on in the locker room and the suspensions and the fines for little things like being on your cell phone. All these things, the leaked, anonymous sources to media. What we're seeing on the field is what should be disconcerting for Giants fans and for ownership. Sometimes they play great for a quarter. Sometimes they'll play great for a half. Sometimes they won't play great at all. They haven't figured out how to put together a full game. And a lot of it's on the defense, where they spent so much money last year, and they were so good last year, leading them to an 11-5 record. I see frustration, right? I see guys just getting fed up with a turnover or a punt, and it shows itself on the next play or the next series, and that's how San Francisco put up 470 yards against one of the better defenses in the National Football League, at least one of the ones we thought was going to be one of the better defenses in the National Football League.
On to teams better than the Giants, which I guess is all of them. The Rams, dominated.
Wait, the Browns are still winless.
Oh, that's true. I forgot about the Browns haven't won since this time a year ago. The Rams dominate the Texans. The Vikings get 38 points with Case Keenum at quarterback against Washington, and the Saints win their 7th in a row, crushing the Bills.
Yeah.
Which 7-2 NFC team is the best?
Well, I'm a little biased here. They're all really good. Case Keenum is surprising everyone who used to say, Case Keenum. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Case Keenum's your quarterback, but he's playing fantastic football. But I'm going to say the Saints, and maybe I'm biased because it's of their run game. I love what Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara are doing and taking pressure off of Drew Brees. But I think more importantly, defensively, this Saints team is a completely different iteration of what we thought they would be, right? Dennis Allen has got them playing fantastic football. And even if you include those first 2 games of the season against the Vikings, who went crazy on them, and the Pats, they're still a top 10 defense. You take those out, they're a top 5 defense. So they're aggressive defensively. They're running the ball. It almost feels old school, but I know Sean Payton well enough to know that he's never going to say, yeah, I'm an old school guy. I'm running the ball and playing defense. Eventually, Drew Brees, who is one of the best that we've seen over the last decade and a half, is going to be able to exercise his ability to throw the ball downfield, score 50 points with his arm, and do all these other things. So I'm excited about the Saints because they're doing the fundamentals right on the other side of the ball while doing, running the ball on the offensive side.
It's just so different. We're used to seeing Brees sling it 45, 50 times
by necessity.
a game.
And
what team
you don't have
is this?
to. Exactly.
Yeah, right. You mentioned the Patriots. They have no problem dismantling the Broncos on Sunday Night Football. The win marks the 270th of Bill Belichick's coaching career, and for that, The man under the hoodie earns our Adrenaline Performance presented by Toyota. Let's go places. 270 wins. Belichick ties Tom Landry third all-time on the coach's wins list. Tiki Pats began the season 2-2. The doubters came out, and all of a sudden they run off 5 straight wins. We've seen this before. Are they the overwhelming favorite in the AFC?
I mean, they have to be. Where's Chicken Little, by the way? Is the sky falling right yet for the Pats? Look, New England is what New England is because of Tom Brady. He is leading the league in passing. He hasn't missed a beat. You hear his dad talking about, yeah, he's going to retire in a couple years or 3 years because that's when Belichick's going to be done with him. I'm not so sure, right? He looks phenomenal, and more importantly, this team capitalizes on mistakes. If you watch this Denver game last night, and a lot of people will point to the defense. Oh, this defense has just been overrated this year. Actually, it's not. Last night, it wasn't about the D. It was about special teams. You fumble a punt. You allow a kickoff return. You get a punt blocked. Right? Let's hand Tom Brady 30 yards to go score a touchdown. You know what's going to happen. You give Brady 70 yards to go score a touchdown. We know what's going to happen. But when you look at the rest of the AFC, the Steelers struggled just to get by the Indianapolis Colts this weekend. I think the Pats are heads and heels above anyone else, even some of those 6-3 or 7-2 teams in the AFC as well.
How about overall here? Pats are one of 6 teams 7-2 or better. We talked about some of them in the NFC. The Pats, who is the best team in the entire NFL right now?
I got to say the Eagles. They're so good. Their defense is almost top 10. I think they're about 11. But they don't give up points, right? They bend a little bit, but they don't break. It kind of reminds you of the Patriots team that won the Super Bowl last year, #1 scoring defense. This Eagles team hasn't given up a touchdown in the first quarter, as we saw last week. Obviously, they were off this weekend. And Carson Wentz is playing MVP-style football, right? They got a good run game. There's confidence. I love that their head coach and coordinator, and even Filippi, who was their quarterback coach, they're all making Carson Wentz into this man right before our eyes, who has confidence, who's unafraid, who doesn't wilt under any kind of pressure. And if you have that with good defense and good run game, it's football like I used to love to watch it. And so I like the Eagles as #1 right now. That could change in 2 or 3 weeks, pending injuries, etc. But the Eagles are still top of my book right now.
Now, according to reports, the NFL's compensation committee will reconvene today to discuss Roger Goodell's contract, possible extension. Jerry Jones hasn't been a fan of that. There are reports he's attempting to overthrow Goodell. How bad is it for the NFL that this situation is playing out so publicly?
Well, it's public for a reason, because Jerry Jones wants it public. Now, we all know that he was ad hoc on the compensation committee. When he started making a stink about all these things, they kicked him off the committee. I think he's trying to build momentum to get power in his favor or get influence in his favor. And at the end of the day, though, I was having this conversation over the weekend. The other owners aren't going to see this as dire as Jerry Jones does. Yes, Jerry's probably still upset about the Ezekiel Elliott situation. But there was a couple of things that happened with Deflategate and now with Ezekiel Elliott. With Deflategate, it was all about science. Is the science going to say that Tom Brady cheated or not? The science said he probably didn't, but it didn't matter. The commissioner could do whatever he wants. With Ezekiel Elliott, it's not about anything other than fairness. Did he get a fair trial? Did he get a fair representation of what happened in the situation before he was suspended for 6 games? Probably not. Didn't get fair. But it doesn't matter. The commissioner can do whatever he wants. At this point, no matter what happens, the commissioner can do whatever he wants. That's what our collective bargaining agreement, or their collective bargaining agreement, says. And so Jerry Jones wants to change that, I'm sure, in some capacity, because it's shining a bad light on his team. But I think the other owners, who are only paying Roger Goodell about $1.5 million each of his $40-something million salary, it's not a big enough deal for the amount of money that they're getting back from this $14 billion business.
Now, I must say, you're looking very GQ today.
It's cold. I had to layer.
Always, come
See,
on.
I love when the weather changes, because I can layer.
Oh,
You put like this.
Because you got that stuff in your closet.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Colin Kaepernick was named the Citizen of the Year by GQ.
Yeah.
We just talked about Goodell and Jerry Jones, all those guys involved in this situation as well. Do you think the league is aware of the perception gap of how he seems to be viewed in NFL circles versus a cover in a story like this?
I don't think so. I think, look, Colin Kaepernick, and I've had this conversation many, many times, he was literally 3 yards away from winning a Super Bowl MVP. He would have won MVP if they would have beat the Baltimore Ravens. He didn't, right? And so we would think that's going to be his legacy. Like, he came out of nowhere, took Alex Smith's job, the 49ers, took him to the Super Bowl. even if he did come back and play, if he went to a Super Bowl, I think that this is going to be Colin Kaepernick's legacy into perpetuity. For the rest of his life, we will align him with this movement in the National Football League that it raised ire. It caused, I think, a galvanization of other players around the league. And so this makes sense to me. Like Citizen Q, who's not worried about the anthem protests and misaligning this as disrespecting our military, will look at Colin Kaepernick and say, this guy was changing people's lives. And I think GQ did a good job by naming him the Citizen of the Year, because he created a conversation that we simply weren't having.
I totally agree, and I think where the NFL as an entity, if they kept him out, was short-sighted is they turned him into a martyr and therefore made him much more powerful out of the league than he would have been inside.
And that may have been the idea from the very beginning, right? Why would you sue for collusion? Because it keeps the story alive. It forces discovery and depositions and people having to talk about this issue in a deeper way, in ways they probably don't want to do publicly.
No shortage of conversation in the NFL, just your average Monday.
Yeah, man.
Tiki Barber, thanks for being with us.
Pleasure, guys.
All right, from the NFL to college football now, with two of the top 3 teams in the nation getting knocked off this past weekend. We're sure to see a shakeup when the latest college football playoff rankings are released on Tuesday. For more on the chaos in college football, we caught up with SI.com's Pete Mundo.
Here with our college football analyst, Pete Mundo. And Pete, it was 2 chains time 2 for the U this weekend. 4 turnovers. They drubbed Notre Dame, who was number 3 coming in. Same week Alabama struggles. Is Miami perhaps the best team in the country?
I'm not going to go there yet, Robin. They're good. They're talented, both sides of the ball, very balanced. But in terms of best team in the country, no, they're not. They have a lot to still prove in my eyes. They got to play the ACC title game against Clemson. If they're undefeated there, then absolutely, they are going to be the top team in the country, I believe. But I can't do it just yet because I haven't seen enough. They have a good resume. The last 2 weeks have been really good. Virginia Tech, Notre Dame, who they absolutely crushed. But I think it says a lot about where Notre Dame is, too. Little overrated. Their best game was a loss to Georgia. We didn't admit that enough over these past few weeks, that their best game was a loss. And then Georgia gets stomped on, too. So that makes Notre Dame's loss look even worse.
You better hide. You just called Miami and Notre Dame both overrated in the same answer.
Miami, you mentioned they'll take on Clemson in the ACC title game. They still got 2 before that, Pitt and Virginia. But if they go unscathed to the title game and they lose to Clemson, can a 1-loss Miami team find themselves in the playoff?
I don't think so, Ryan, because it'll just be the 2 top 15 wins that we'll talk about these past 2 weeks, and that's it. Rest of the schedule is pretty soft. They got by Syracuse, by an 8-point margin. Georgia Tech was a close game, too. They don't have these massive victories over some of these teams that you should have expected them to absolutely crush. So you look at like in Oklahoma, they have 3 top 11 wins over TCU, Oklahoma State, Ohio State. That's a better resume as a 1-loss team. Miami won't even be then a conference champion with that 1 loss. So even though Notre Dame is now out of the playoff picture, I can't go in and say yes, that a 1-loss Hurricanes team is going to be in the college football playoff. There's too much else that would have to happen.
All right, let's talk about some of the things that have happened, could happen when it comes to these losses. Obviously, Georgia gets knocked off by Auburn. Auburn looked great, but they have 2 losses already at this point. Ohio State gets back on track. They have 2 losses. Clemson has 1 loss. Oklahoma has a loss. Is this the year, Pete, that we could actually see a 2-loss team in the playoff?
Now with the Irish gone, it's very possible. Look at Auburn. They smoked Georgia. They play Alabama in a couple of weeks. Then they would play Georgia again in an SEC title. That would potentially be 3 top 5 wins over the final month of the season. And their losses aren't bad. You look at earlier in the season, LSU is not a great loss, but it's one of those seasons where I think that you could absolutely see Auburn go out there and make a college football playoff, to be the first 2-loss team to do it, and it would be impressive. Clemson's their other loss, of course, that's nothing to be ashamed at all. So you look at Auburn, then you go down the list from there. I think Ohio State, you beat Wisconsin in the Big Ten title game. If that Wisconsin team is still undefeated, it's probably a top 5 win there as well. And we know they like Ohio State. They have a soft spot for Ohio State. The committee seems to have that every year. So they'll look at that and say, okay, maybe Ohio State. And then Oklahoma as well. 3 top 11 wins. Nobody else can say that. The Big 12 championship game would be a rematch with TCU. TCU is still probably a top 10 to 15 team at that point. So I think that there would be a strong case for Oklahoma as well, even though they wouldn't be the Big 12 champion. We saw it last year with Ohio State getting in over Penn State. They're not afraid to put in a non-conference champion over a conference champion.
Of course, Tennessee not in this conversation. They fired Butch Jones. How desirable is that job, and who's going to fill it?
I think it's a great job. You look at where Knoxville is located, you're 3 hours to Nashville, to Atlanta, to Charlotte. 3 hotbeds in college football and 3 growing cities as well. So I think that's a great geographical location. You're in the SEC East, which is a little easier than the SEC West. It's Georgia, and then it's a lot of confusion from there on down. So, and then the infrastructure and facilities are great in Knoxville as well. I think it's a really good job, a lot of money, a lot of power brokers behind it. In terms of who fills it, John Gruden is the pipe dream. I don't think that happens. I know his son goes there. Also, his wife was a cheerleader there. He was a coach there a million years ago. The more likely option to me is Dan Mullen at Mississippi State. He's in the SEC West. He's making almost $5 million a year. They probably got to increase it from there. But he looks at it and says that's a better chance to get to an SEC title game than going through Alabama year in, year out. From there on down, maybe Mike Norvell at Memphis takes his talents from the west side of the state to the east side of the state, another option. Scott Frost, I don't see that being their go-to guy. Nebraska could go after him. That's where he played. Florida is right in his backyard where he is now at UCF. Those seem like more likely landing spots for Scott Frost. So I think that's the order. Gruden, the pipe dream. Mullen, decent chance, and then Mike Norvell will be my third guy on the list.
Gruden linked to any high-profile opening in college, NFL these days. Chip Kelly, maybe? I mean, he's linked to Florida right now.
I know. The Chip Kelly's linked to Florida. I got to see Chip Kelly actually dive in head first and say, I want a job before he goes, you know what, I'll go to Tennessee. That Chip Kelly's on that John Gruden level. I don't want to go there yet until I hear the rumors are a little more serious than they are right now.
He calls those pipe dreams. I tend to agree with them. Pete Mundo, our college football insider. Thanks, man.
Anytime, guys.
Following the Cavs' win over the Mavericks on Saturday, in which Mavs rookie Dennis Smith Jr. put up big numbers, LeBron James had this to say.
The Knicks passed on a really good one. And Dallas got the diamond in the rough. He should be a Knick. It's going to make some headlines, but he should be a Knick. But Dallas is definitely, I know they're excited that he didn't go there. So he's an unbelievable talent, athleticism. He's very poised to be his age. Can shoot the ball, can penetrate. He's going to only get better and better with the opportunity that he's given here to play. You know, so Dallas got a good one.
Of course, this could be taken as a slight at the Knicks' Frank Ntilikina, drafted just before Smith. Ntilikina said the comments don't affect him, while Porzingis said, I would not change Frank for anybody. Simple. Ryan, was the shot from LeBron unnecessary there?
I don't know if it was necessary, but it's clear this is a shot. This is a shot that LeBron knew he was taking. He says it right there. This is probably going to make headlines. He knew it would, and it shows that bad blood between LeBron and Phil Jackson ran very deep. I know Phil's gone, but Frank was Phil's last draft pick. He passed on Smith, took Frank. LeBron knows that. He's taken a shot. Obviously, he has a history with Smith. He's been mentoring him since he was in high school, but LeBron chooses his words pretty carefully. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he doesn't pass it a chance to take a shot at this guy.
100%. It was a petty jab at Phil Jackson, not necessarily Frank Ntilikina, because Frank's been impressive to me. I mean, if you're arguing Smith versus Ntilikina, Dennis Smith Jr. clearly has a better feel for scoring and getting to the basket, but Frank can guard multiple positions, up to 3 positions, I would say. So that may actually be an argument talent-wise. I think this was just a forum where LeBron said, all right, I can stick it to Phil a little bit more.
And he will always take that chance. You talk about being impressive. How about the Celtics? 12-2. The Celtics own the best record in the NBA, and those 12 wins have come consecutively after dropping the first 2 games of the season. No Kyrie Irving the past 2 games. Al Horford missed some time recently. Of course, Gordon Hayward is out for the season. What does this 12-game run say about Coach Brad Stevens?
It says that he's going to win Coach of the Year. I mean, the Celtics have been impressive. You mentioned guys have been out. I mean, there's an article up on SI right now talking about Kyrie Irving's MVP chances, which I don't see at all, quite frankly. I'm impressed with Kyrie's overall play, which I credit him for and Brad Stevens for. But if you just look at the numbers, he's down 5 points per game in scoring. He's down in field goal percentage. He's down in assists. Yet his team continues to win, whether he's in the lineup or not, whether Horford, who's been excellent, is in the lineup or not. They have a very balanced roster, a very good team, and one of the best coaches in the game, certainly the best young coaches.
Yeah, look what he's done with basically a new roster. I mean, he only had 3 or 4 guys back from a year ago, and it's the young guys. The veterans have been hurt, but look at this. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Terry Rozier, Marcus Smart, average age 21. These guys are all shining, and what Stevens has been able to do is get them to buy in, because what do they do so well? They play defense, they lead the league in defensive efficiency, and they rebound. They're second in the league in rebound rate. Those are huge. Defense and rebounding is about effort, Robin. He has got these guys giving him the effort at a young age. That's creating a certain type of system, a certain type of atmosphere for Boston, and it's translating into wins.
They're in a great place, both now and going forward. I guess the only question is, are they playing at 100% in November, and do they have that next level when it comes to the playoffs? The Celtics likely won't be thinking about the top players in this upcoming draft, but the Cavs might with the Brooklyn pick they got from Boston. I talked to SI NBA draft analyst Jeremy Woo about his top 5 overall NBA prospects. SI's The Front Office is your home for all the NBA draft content, and I'm here with SI NBA draft analyst Jeremy Woo to go over the top 5 overall prospects for this coming draft, or at least, amateur players getting ready who could be in this coming draft. As an NBA fan, I'm super excited to see who's next. We ready to rock and roll?
Let's do it.
Let's go with number 5. Who do you got?
So number 5, we got Mohamed Bamba from Texas. Really big, long center, like Rudy Gobert type, freakish length. I think teams see him as an athletic guy who can protect the rim, especially in today's league where everyone's athletic, everything's spread out. Having a guy like Bamba who can move, developing on offense and can really block shots. I think you might see Shaka Smart go back to some of the havoc stuff from VCU, and Bamba will kind of be at the middle of it, and sort of, you'll really see him impact the game on the defensive end, and teams will, be watching closely.
Let's see who's up next. Who you got at number 4?
Number 4, we got Michael Porter Jr. from Missouri. A really big, long combo forward, can really shoot the ball for his size. Guy who's 6'10", can really shoot. Obviously, that's a translatable skill right there. You see, you got big guys like that, like the KDs, the Brandon Ingrams. Not that he's those guys, but he has that same type of mold where it's very, easy to see those guys succeeding.
Is he the number 1 scorer as far as prospects go?
I think so. And he has a chance to lead the SEC in scoring this year. I think he's, he's very polished. Has a good array of moves. Legitimately great ball handler for his size on the wing. And I think he has potential to guard both the 3 and the 4.
Which makes him very valuable. If you can score and guard multiple positions, you're basically perfect for today's NBA. Let's go to number 3.
Number 3, we got Luka Doncic from Real Madrid, from Slovenia. He is a very unique case. He's, might be the best European prospect we've seen.
Wow.
He's 18. He's dominating the EuroLeague right now. He's sort of a lead ball handler, combo guard, can do a lot of things. I think the biggest question is, how does his athleticism translate on the defensive end? But he's so far along for an 18-year-old at such a high level, playing so well, that it's really hard to see him, failing.
People forget when you're playing, you said the EuroLeague, they're already playing against maybe higher competition than college basketball.
Right, yeah. I mean, to put it into context, he's averaging 20-plus points per game right now, playing against grown men. He's 18, and this is his 3rd season, playing up with Real Madrid, one of the best teams in the world outside the NBA. So it's really hard to undersell how impressive it is what he's done.
Is he a guy you could see rising as people get more familiar, because sometimes those names aren't quite recognized at first?
Yeah, he's definitely in the mix for number 1. All 5 of these guys are going to be in the mix. He's very much a known quantity for scouts. Guys have seen him. He's been on the big stages. But he'll be right in that mix.
All right, number 2, who you got?
Number 2, we got Marvin Bagley from Duke. Really impressive player, really versatile. I think that's his biggest strength. He's built like a power forward. He might be able to slide down and play some center. He has some perimeter skills. He's so smooth and so versatile. And he can face up. He can attack the basket. He's a left-hander. Can shoot a little bit. I think he has potential to be sort of one of these positionless bigs that you see succeeding at such a high clip.
There seems to be a theme developing here with these guys, and it's length. And I'm guessing that theme will continue at number 1.
Yeah, absolutely. Number 1, we got DeAndre Ayton from Arizona, who has really worked on his body in the offseason. He's a true center. He can step out and shoot the 3. He's got great footwork on the inside, great body. He started lifting weights for the first time this summer. He's such a good athlete for 7 feet, and he can legitimately step out and shoot it. I'd like to see him really play more on the inside, work on the block and show that, sort of like with Karl Towns, Calipari at Kentucky just put Towns on the block and was like, you're going to be a big, and then you can shoot threes later. And I'm curious to see how they'll use him role-wise. But like with the way the league is shifting, you see these bigs, the Porzingises, the Embiids, who can step out and shoot that three. Even guys like Brook Lopez, who couldn't shoot before, have stepped out. He's a guy who can sort of play that role and also be impactful on defense.
Jeremy Woo's top 5 overall prospects. Keep it locked to the front office for all your updates when it comes to the NBA draft.